I am going to be documenting what I have knit in January, and I'm going to start off with my only true finished object of this month. And I really didn't knit the majority of this. I knit the majority of this in December of 2022, and that is my Stockholm Slipover. I knit this out of a alpaca wool that I got at a flea market. It was very, very reduced in price. So I think I got each skein of this for just under, no, exactly €2. Oh, there we go. This is one of the reasons I haven't knit very much this month. We got a cat, and he is a little bit needy and also very obsessed with chewing a lot of stuff, but especially yarn if he gets his fingers on it. He's not always that interested in yarn, but like if he's in a playful mood, which is often, fairly often. So anyways, he's playing with a toy now, so that's good. Anyway, so this is an alpaca Stockholm Slipover. I did make a few modifications. I wanted like the armhole to be a bit bigger. I did the collar exactly as it was. It has some very interesting short row shaping along the back that I really enjoyed, and I think I'll probably use in other projects that I freestyle. One thing that I didn't do was I didn't do any of the decreases that are recommended, and I'm very happy with that actually. It gives sort of a slouchy fit. It's easier to fit over larger, like more bulky shirts I would want to put it over. And one thing that I've got to say about this wool, I mean, I've knit with alpaca a few times before, and this one is definitely more rustic, let's say. A friend of mine and I actually knit this at the same time, using the same wool in different shades. Both of us had got it at the flea market. We had the same quantity. We knit the same size. She's a much looser knitter than me. I'm a much tighter knitter. And they look, firstly, they look very different, but they also feel very different. Hers is a lot softer. Mine's still soft, but it's a bit scratchy. So I do wear it mainly over thicker items. So I would wear it maybe over like a shirt like this. This is just a knit cotton. I did not knit it. It's ages and aeons old. Yeah, I also knitted a bit more cropped. You can see like my non-woven in ends. I knit it a bit more cropped because I wanted to wear it with some specific pants that I have from Ravelry that are pretty high-waisted, that I own several pairs of, and I often wear to work. So this is perfect. When I'm teaching, there's one classroom I'm in that's pretty warm most of the time, and then the other classroom on different days is a bit colder, but I still end up being in warm places. And this is like a perfect piece to just throw on so that your core is warm, but you're not like sweating. And I like to have, breathable arms. So yeah, this is, I've already gotten a lot of wear out of this, despite the fact that I'm not as happy with like the feel of the yarn, considering that it was alpaca. But yeah, very warm. I will say one thing, since it is sort of scratchier, I found that it hasn't pilled basically at all. It's held up really, really well. Has a little nice halo. In general, it looks store-bought. People think I've bought this all the time. So this was my first petite knit pattern. I know that she's a very popular designer, and to be honest, I would prefer to also like freestyle my own patterns and just do some math with it. But I have to say, yeah, I learned like this new technique, and it's making me wonder if I should purchase her Aros pattern, which is sort of like a saddle shoulder, but set in sleeve looking kind of pattern. I'll put up a picture. I've been thinking about that pattern for a while. I really like the way it drapes and fits, and it has stripes, which I really like. Well, I'm finding that I really like stripes. The cat is being a cat. Okay, so that's my most finished object. My next finished object, or my next almost finished object, because, well, you'll see in a second, is the Spot Sweater by Anne Venzel. I knit this pattern also using yarn from that flea market I said, and so I think I had a total of 12 balls of yarn. all of it in DK to worsted weight, like differing weights of yarn. Oh, I think I may have even had a few Aran weight yarns. And I sort of mixed them all together, differed the colors, and I came up with, well, I've come out with a design that I'm really, really, really happy with. The pattern itself is very well written, especially after the back of the neck is completed. The back of the neck is amazingly, like the thought process behind how it was made, how it was designed is really, really well executed. No, I think what I mean is that it's just impressive how Anne managed to create such an elegant and seamless like continuation of that pattern. So let me just show it to you. It looks kind of like this. This is the back of it. You can see that it's got a bunch of little triangles in it. And I've seen a lot of people do it all in one color, and I think that looks gorgeous. But the back of the neck, so instead of short rows, you just work back and forth. However, it is rather complicated. I would recommend she has some videos, and you really should watch her videos because she explains in great detail how to do each of the confusing rows. I also have some notes on my Ravelry page that were sort of, I wrote for myself in case I do it again. But this is my longest project ever. I knit my own wedding dress, and this took longer than that. And my wedding dress was all over lace. So this is really long. I don't know, if you know the pattern, you'll know that this is longer than the pattern recommends because I actually made it to be a house coat. So I'll speak a little bit about that. So you'll see in the front here, I've got a steek line that I added right here. And the reason it's not a fully finished object is because I eventually will be crocheting up down the sides like this, and then I'm going to be cutting it and maybe adding a button band if I'm not sick of it yet. I do have more of this gray, like the lighter gray in this section that I could use to add a button band to it, and I do have more of the gray that I used for the collar, which is actually from a different project, but I thought it fit pretty well. So let me speak a little bit about how I blended the colors. So at the beginning, I had all different colors. I had very few duplicate colors. And each of them were about 120 meters per 50 grams, I believe. So it is a rather hefty piece. Oh, there you go. Oh, there he is. Yeah, so it's a rather hefty piece, it's rather heavy, and I knew immediately that I wanted it to be a house coat. Just even when I was first swatching it, you could feel the fabric was really rather, it was gonna be too heavy to wear, for example, at work or anything like that. The other thing is I knew that it was going to be kind of crazy with all these different colors being blended together. So as a result, yeah, I made that executive decision really early on, which is also why I added that steek. I've steeked a garment before, a garment I made last year. Hold on a sec, I've got a cat trying to attack my knitting. What's up, buddy? This is really fun. Have a look. Yeah, so I knew it was going to be rather thick material, so yeah, I decided to make it sort of this sort of house coat type of thing. And what I did when I was knitting the pattern, I found that if I changed, so you can see that there's this sort of 6-row repeat where you create a triangle and then you offset it and you create another triangle. And I found that I had a lot of more dark colors than I had light colors. So I decided to invert the pattern from the original. The original has the background color is light and the little triangle extra bits are dark color, but I inverted it because of just the quantities of yarn I had. In the end, you do use significantly less of the light color. I have a lot of the light colors left, like little scraps of them left. I tried to use as much as I could of my favorite colors in here. For example, I used a lot of this orange. This was actually a scrap yarn that I had from another project. I put in a lot of my scraps. It was just such a great stash buster, and it was such a great use of those odd bits of like wool that I had that I didn't really know what to do with. I would alternate the dark color somewhere in the middle of the row. So that way there's these different light colors really stand out, but you don't end up having like a blocking where you feel like you have real stripes, because I don't know if you can really see it. It's hard to see here, but you can see that in some places, I think I did it on the arm. I started the stripe really along with I'm not describing this very well, but I started the next background color at the same time that I started the contrast color, and that led to this sort of blocky finish, which I didn't really enjoy as much. So I really recommend, if you want to have sort of a more gradual transition. I found that when you're trying to create this more uniform changing of colors, it was really helpful to change the background color in the center of the row. So rather than starting it at the same time as the contrast color changed, I changed it somewhere in the middle of the row, and that really helped to get a more uniform transition. And I think that it was rather successful. I also made the two sleeves the same, so the sleeves are basically identical, as you can kind of see, but they're not identical to the body. I did try and keep some of the key colors the same. So for example, you can see I used this lighter blue in both sections, or I used this, let's say black and gray towards the end. So it does look sort of cohesive. And I did keep it the same to a certain degree, but at some point I just was, I wanted to experiment a little bit more in the arms, just because the rounds were smaller. And I did also complete the arms first to make sure I had enough yarn for both arms. And then afterwards, I went ahead and I finished all the rest of the scraps I had for the body. So yeah, another thing is I knit at a much tighter gauge than the pattern recommends for, but I'm really happy with it and fit with it because I did want it to be a bit tighter, and it's a rather oversized pattern. I did knit the smallest size, and I believe I used 4mm or 3.75 4mm needles, depending on whether I was doing the arms or the body. And I believe the pattern calls for 4.5. So yeah, it was much tighter, but I did want sort of a tight knit fabric. And all my gauge swatches, while I did knit the gauge swatches in the round, I ended up knitting much tighter on the final piece. And so, yeah, that reminds me, something that I did early on when I was probably just here at the yoke, I ended up blocking my project on the needles, which is something I hadn't done before, but I already had the idea that my gauge was much tighter than I had originally anticipated. And in fact, when I did block it, I found it was indeed significantly tighter. I think originally I had thought I had 20 stitches per 10 centimeters, and I ended up having something like 22, or yeah, I think it was 22. And also my row gauge was different. So I was really happy that I did that. And I did it again once I got to some significant portion of the sleeves, because I had the feeling that I didn't need to decrease as much as the pattern had suggested. And I did, and I actually did significantly fewer decreases. I think I did half the decreases. All this information is on my Ravelry. So in any case, my thoughts about the pattern are, it's very well written. It feels like magic when you're doing it, especially at the beginning when it all kind of comes together and you close off the yoke. Those first few days were really, really interesting. But it does get to be a bit of a slog at some point, just because it is all over color work. I did find that alternating the colors kept me really interested in the project. So if you are interested in this pattern, I would say that it's something you want to Yeah, you want to mentally prepare for the fact that it's going to take a while, probably, but it is a cool stash busting project, in my opinion. About the designer herself, I know that she's a little bit controversial because of some of her, I don't know, I don't know if it's her opinions on size inclusivity or her approach to size inclusivity. Up until recently, she was a smaller designer, so it could be that it was more challenging for her to make size inclusive patterns, but I'm hoping moving forward that she's going to reconsider that. I also think like a lot of her patterns, like I knit the smallest size, and if I had knit it to gauge, it would have been massive on me. So even her extra small is rather large, basically. I know it's meant to be that way, but yeah, I'm a small person. Sometimes patterns are too big for me. So anyways, one last thing I'll say is I did add some at the very bottom. I added a few increases on the bottom. You can see it sort of flares out. That's for it to fit around my hips because it does go past my bum to keep me nice and toasty in the winter. I usually would be wearing this around the house already. I've worn it a lot. You can already see it's pilling because it's very soft. It's 100% wool. The whole thing is 100% wool, except for a few odd scraps that have like, I don't know, a bit of alpaca or something in them. But yeah, I can't wait to steek this. I will say that I'm probably going to wait until I have a break, like a school break, so I can really sit down and make sure I do it right. And also, I have another thing on my needles right now that is really taking up the majority of my time. So before I get to that project though, I'm going to show you two other projects that are mostly finished. They're kind of on pause right now because of the last project that I'm working on right now. This is a ranunculus made from Newtendon yarn. You can kind of see the pattern. Actually, it's showing up pretty well. Sometimes it's really hard to see. So I sort of jumped on the Newtendon bandwagon last year. It was one of the last yarns I bought before I tried to stop buying yarn. I'll talk about how successful I've been with that. But I really feel like I'm the kind of person I do well with like high contrast items in my wardrobe. And I wasn't happy with how one colored this was. And even though it does have a lace pattern, it was difficult to see it in certain lightings. So I added this I-cord edging everywhere. I mean, there's an I-cord bind off on the sleeve. I sort of messed up this connection. I might try and redo that. But it looks really good on this side. I did do the diagonal cuff. You can see it's not really that diagonal, but I kind of like the little flare that it gives. This is my first time doing the diagonal cuff on the ranunculus. This is a pattern I've knit. This is my fourth one of these. I love this pattern. It's so quick and easy to knit, and yeah, it's great. You can see though that I have stopped myself from knitting the last sleeve because of this other project. So I can't wait to finish this. I can't wait to wear it. I have already been wearing it a little bit, like when it had its two sleeves on stitch holders. I like it even more that it has this I-cord edging. How I did this was I knit into the same stitch a couple times over here, and then I knit an I-cord edging and picking up a stitch every time, and it worked out great. The only thing I will say is you can kind of see on this side it's pretty gross, but on the other side it looks really good. And the trick to getting that to happen was like doing it the other way around. So I knit it from the wrong side because the wrong side of the I-cord actually looked better than the right side of the I-cord. It was a little bit of trial and error, but I think because the Newtendon is so... Newtendon, if you don't know, is an unspun yarn. And because the Newtendon is so fluffy, I guess, it was sort of peeking through different parts of my I-cord, but yeah, on the wrong side it looks really good. Also, something I really like about this one is there is a clear right and wrong side with the ranunculus because there are some really gorgeous short rows. However, it's sometimes difficult to tell which side. You have to kind of like look at both of them. And since the back where I started the I-cord looks a bit gross, it's really easy for me to tell which is the right and wrong side, which I actually enjoy. Yeah, I'm sure I'll get a lot of wear out of this. It weighs basically nothing and it's so warm. So, but I do feel a bit like a bear wearing it. So we'll see. We'll see how much wear I get out of that. I mean, just judging by my other ranunculuses, I'll get a lot of wear out of it. So, I also always have a sock project on the go. It's what I knit when I'm in public transport. And I've finished one sock of a pair of socks. This is a super, super gorgeous pattern. With super, super gorgeous yarn. I have 2 socks with this yarn already. It's the same yarn in different colors. It's called Amble by the Fiber Company. And I mean, what can I say? I don't know if you can see this yarn. It doesn't do it justice. It's so, so beautiful. They're both beautiful. And the other one feels like an oil slick. And this is like moss or something. It's so gorgeous. And this is the Ravelry sock. It's a pom-pom pattern from, I think, spring of last year. And this is my second time knitting this pattern. I learned a lot from knitting it the first time. I love the heel construction. It's a heel construction that I've actually repeated many times on just like a vanilla sock pattern, or, you know, my own, whatever, my own stitch pattern. Like a freestyle sock pattern. But the thing I really love about the sock is that it has color work in the sections where I feel like I usually get the most holes in my sock, which are around the heel, like in this area or this area, and around the foot. Actually, the biggest holes I usually get are like around the ball of my foot, just because I have like wide feet. And so I feel like they hit against the sides of my shoes. So now I have a color work sock with like my 2 favorite sock colors. So I'm really excited about this. It's a little bit like tight to get on, but once it's on, it's really, really snug and lovely because of the color work here. I would say if you're planning on knitting this, you want to keep a really loose tension when you get to this section, like right as you're finishing the heel, those next couple rows, the ones before it and ones after, just because that will help you like get your foot in and out. And then afterwards, you don't have to be as careful. But anyways, like look at that sock. So anyways, I'm so excited to have the other one, but I'm only allowed to knit on it when I'm in public transport, or I'm allowed to like do the last Kitchener stitch stuff when I'm at home. But yeah, I'm only up to here on the other sock. So it's a cuff down sock, which is not my favorite construction because I don't like the Kitchener stitch. However, I had made like a joke about how this might be the year I learned how to do the Kitchener stitch. And I didn't really talk about this very much, but something that was new in the construction of this, aside from the interesting short rows on this Stockholm slipover, is the fact that you do a Italian bind off, which is a sewn off bind off for the bottom. It's a sewn off bind off that basically creates almost like a double knitted edge, and it's perfect for ribbing. But really what it is it's the Kitchener stitch. However, because of the fact that you're doing a different like threading pattern on the knits and the purls, it makes so much more sense. And as a result, now I feel like I understand the Kitchener stitch. So anyways, it's not my best work because I actually dropped a stitch while I was Kitchenering it together. I don't know if you can see it. There's like a dropped stitch there that I had to go back and like pick up. It was a nightmare. But anyways, aside from that, I'm pretty happy with the Kitchener that I've done. I used, oh my gosh, what's her name? Susan Bryan. I don't know if you guys know her. Susan Bryan is like to me, she's like a YouTube legend. She's like the fairy godmother of knitting. And she has an amazing video about doing the Kitchener stitch without the ears, like the edges at the end that kind of stick out. So I just followed that tutorial to kind of refresh my mind. And yeah, I love the sock. I can't wait to have another one. Can't wait to wear these. I think I'll just always be wearing those. Okay. And then my last thing I've been knitting on, my friend is getting married in the middle of February, and I really wanted to knit her something, but I did not know what to knit her. And I do know she wears scarves, and I thought she's wearing like a hot pink, gorgeous like suit for her wedding. And I was like, I'm gonna make her like a hot pink like scarf or shawl. But then I was afraid like the colors would clash, or like it wouldn't be vibrant enough, or it would be too vibrant. I thought about making her socks, but I was like, wedding socks, like what? So I ended up just letting the yarn do the choosing for me, and I went into my local yarn store and I found, I'll show you the skein first, this gorgeous skein of yarn. Like, it's hand dyed. It has, and like, this is just luxury on a different level here. 70% baby alpaca, 20% silk, and 10% cashmere. It is amazing. It's called Alpaca Deluxe Fingering, and it's from Wollwerkstatt by Maria Hof KG. Anyways, just so gorgeous. I have another skein of it. I don't actually think I'll be using this skein, and I'm really, I kind of want to return it, but I feel like it's such a special yarn, and I might actually gift it to a friend of mine who has just started knitting that I think would love this color scheme and everything. It's not really my colors, otherwise I would keep it for myself, because it's just, look at that. Oh, I love it. It's so good. But the thing is, like, the way it feels like, you guys know, like the buttery, soft, amazing, just, it's the softest yarn I think I've ever felt in my life. And I've felt a lot of very soft yarn, so that's saying something. And this is the pattern I'm knitting. It's the Ravelry shawl. It's, you can see I have a massive mess up here. And if I had noticed it earlier, I would have ripped back, but I kind of was just knitting and knitting and knitting. I was on a trip this weekend, with work, and yeah, I didn't notice until I actually pulled it out of the bag to be like, wow, it's so long. And oh my God, there's a massive problem. So I'm sort of just praying that when I block it out, it's gonna look fine. It's definitely something that blocks out massively because it's a lace pattern. It's a very interesting pattern. I'll just see if I can show you guys. It creates sort of like a star, flowery pattern. And it's, the way that you construct it is by knitting into the same 3 stitches 3 times. So you knit in, take the yarn and the loop that you've just knit in out, you do a yarn over, and then you knit into those same 3 stitches again. And you do that every other row. There's no purling in this pattern, which is one of the reasons I chose it. I heard from another YouTuber, Florence something, from the Florence Knitting Podcast or something like this, that she knit this in one day. So I was like, yes, easy, I'll knit this in one day. And yeah, it's been like 2 weeks and I haven't gotten much further in it. I have to say, like, it's a really finicky stitch. Now that I'm in the groove, and also from doing a lot of it this weekend, I do feel like I have improved significantly on it. But if I had to go back, I would have picked a different pattern. I probably would have picked a pattern that had like a closer knitting stitch to it, because I think it's so airy. I wonder if it's like even really that practical to wear. But I thought like at least this would give a nice contrast to the hot pink and not really be fighting the hot pink, which was my main concern. Anyways, and in the end, if she doesn't like it, at least she'll probably wear it because it's just so freaking soft. So yeah. Anyways, I'm not super enjoying this pattern. You can also see it's like wonky. Like, look how much longer this is. Anyways, I'm just praying for the magic of blocking at this point. Yeah, what can we do? But I will say that the variegation is really fun to knit with. I don't love wearing variegated items. I've stopped buying like hand-dyed wool for that reason, but I think for this type of stuff, especially things that like sort of mixed lace, in this sort of all over lace pattern, I do think it adds like another layer of interest. I do think this would look beautiful on its own. So anyways, I need to get knitting on this now, so I think I will go do that. And yeah, nothing else in the works. I'm still trying to finish. I have a pair of pants that I've been trying to finish forever. I'm like, 6 rows away from the end, and I can't bring myself to finish them. Does that tell you something? Likely yes. Anyways, so that's all. Hopefully this will be a useful reflection looking back, and I'll, make another one in February. Bye.